the Overman Warrior Podcast.
Hi, it's Rich Hoffman here. I don't do it very much, but it came up very recently. It's about my book, The Gunfighter's Guide to Business. It's been, I don't know what it is about 2026, but maybe I wrote this back in 2021. Good chapter. The tyranny of safety. So I've had some people who have, I guess, so it's just interesting how these things sort of work out. So I wrote this book on business practices because I've had to be a part of and teach lean techniques for years and years, and I got tired of saying sensei and referring everything to like Japanese warrior code that you get in lean. The Toyota folks do a lot of good stuff, and Japan has a great culture. But I always felt that Americans needed their own version. So I wrote a business book. I wrote a business book that embraced our own warrior code, the Gunfighter. And I base it on my sport of fast draw, which I always thought was a great metaphor for the way that you can shoot from the hip when you're really highly skilled in business and being highly competent, and how you should look at business. And it is really kind of written for entrepreneurs, not so much legacy companies that are trying to be corporations. I think it's the anti-corporation book. There's a chapter on you have to place your bets. It's about how do you gamble to get the best thing. So I've had a lot of people tell me this year, and this is an interesting story. It's fun. It's fun to go back through some of these titles, these chapters. The optimistic art of what could be. So one of the criticisms a lot of pessimists out there have of me is I'm way too optimistic. And I am solution-based, so I don't look to hide answers behind problems to cover the fact that you lack the courage to go solve them. So there have been a lot of people this year, 2026, who have come to my office and have come to see me and have found me at places. This happened at Costco the other day. Costco in Liberty Township, and I was going over there to get a hot dog and see what's going on, see what they had, see what the latest treasures are. And I had a person approach me. I normally go in and out without being, but this year I've had at least 6 or 7 different occasions where someone has stopped me because they read the blog, they see the videos, they've read the book, and they recognize me out and about, and they say something and want to talk to me. They want me to sign their book. So I had and this is an out-of-state firm, a very large company, approach me. They liked the book, and they were encouraging me to open my own consulting firm based on this book. and they were willing to pay a hefty summary for me to coach their workforce into the ways of the Gunfighter's Guide to Business, which essentially is motivational speaking on self-initiation, how to leverage gambles or not to have gambles in business, how to make sure that your investments stay secure and you actually can fulfill tasks. But so I keep having to tell the story, and I had to tell these people because it was 2 states away. This opportunity for a significant amount of money, and I think a lot of people in my position would take it in a second. But I'm working on another thing now, and I'm working on, I wouldn't say a sequel to this book, but of course you write a book and I have to get into a premise and I have to talk about a story, a personal story. It's a story I would tell if I was consulting and you get into a boardroom or a conference room and you tell a group of people, how you came to know what you know. So the reason why I have to say the story is to explain why I had to say no to this opportunity. I talk very poorly of consultants in this book. That doesn't mean they're all bad. It just means that typically it takes a couple kind of people in the world, and I break them down to the gunfighters and the dandies. If you ever seen the movie The Unforgiven, one of the dandies was the guy that was in jail who wrote dime novels about real gunfighters. And those are kind of the consultant class. And I call them in this book the dandies. Where the gunfighters were the guys that actually went and engaged the target. They would put their life on the line to make something happen, have a bloody duel with somebody who opposes them. And I tend to say that that's the kind of guts, that's the right stuff that it takes to make American business work. And of course, in this modern age of modern corporatisms, that's a very unpopular position. So that's why I had to say no, because I'm in a place now where I'm working on, it's not about the money. You work to make money, and I think a lot of people hope they can make as much money as possible before they get to be too old to make it. So it's a race against time. So how much money can you make as quickly as possible? And for a lot of people, that means they spend their wealth building years, their 40s and 50s, pretty desperate, throwing everything to the wind to fill their bank account. And when you're dealing with those kinds of people, you're dealing with some real sharks out there. And I warn about those people. And when you have a lot of those kinds of people in your management systems, they're very cutthroat. And it does take this kind of attitude to deal with them. You got to have a gunfighter's mind to navigate that minefield. But I talking here about the tyranny of safety. I call them the safety tyrants. I've talked about it many times. I've done a lot of videos on it. But let me, because this is here I say it's better to be a ghost. So I very much adhere to that in my life. You don't necessarily want to have a corner office that everybody who wants power is targeting to take from you. It's better to be ghostly and ambiguous, not to fall in love with titles, not to fall in love with real estate within an organization that people can take from you at any moment. Because then that gives them leverage over you. You never want to be in that position. One of the reasons why you say the gunfighters, and I talk to a lot of people who are parts of large organizations, full of very smart people, but when you go out to lunch or dinner, you find out they think the same things you do, and they love this book. And everybody who's read it loves it. And I wrote it for really for the gutsy people who might start companies after Trump was put back in office. Now, when I put this book out, Vivek Ramaswamy We were both from Butler County. He was writing his book Woke Inc. I was at a preview event for his book where he had just written it and he didn't even have it published yet. He was passing out cards and we were kind of talking books. And my book came out just a little bit after his book, Woke Inc. came out. And we both had kind of the same idea that, the economy of the 2020s was going to need to have a lot more guts and gusto in it. And I witness up close and personal business practices that are detrimental to that kind of guts. So I wanted to write a book to inspire people, and I'm happy. I talk about it in every one of these videos, The Gunfighter's Guide to Business, but and a fair amount of people have gone out and picked it up, and I think a larger number of people have come to me and said, "Hey, please sign my book. I love my copy of The Gunfighter's Guide to Business." And I don't talk about my own stuff enough. I talk about everybody else's stuff, but I don't really talk about my stuff much. Here's a whole chapter on capturing opportunity cost. Something doesn't get measured enough. The cost of not having opportunity. And playing it safe on too many things and being taught to be safe and timid has an opportunity cost to an organization. When you have too many timid people in your organization and they're not allowing cash flow to be generated, you're going to find trouble. And so I talk about all that in this book in ways that no other business book does. And I'm not out there selling you the book. I'm saying there's a lot of people that watch these videos and they call me and they write me. I had a call today. This week. I had an offer to go to somebody's business, and I've had a lot of experience with consultants in the last year. And my general impression of them is I'm glad, when I wrote unfavorably about them in here, for good reason, because of my previous experience over several decades of doing manufacturing. I've never seen consultants that really brought a lot of helpful something to something. I mean, they're bounty hunters at best, and I talk about that in here too. They're out there to make a buck and take a buck from somebody else who already made something valuable. If you're a bounty hunter, you're collecting a bounty on a head that someone else is trying to get rid of, and the value of that bounty was created by their reputation. So they're reputation chasers, and they like to assassinate people, assassinate reputations, and collect the bounty for those assassinated reputations. And believe me, I don't enjoy dealing with people who are of that nature. And it is very tempting to say, you know what, I could take 2 or 3 months and move to a different state and get paid a lot of money for saying things I say on these videos all the time, essentially. And people who want to build a curriculum for their workforce based on this book, The Gunfighter's Guide to Business. I'm very honored for the offer. And it is a sizable offer. And I have to explain, it's not with me. I'm not so worried about racing to make as much money as possible. So every time a large amount of money gets thrown in my direction, I don't just jump on it. Maybe, I think a lot of people think I'm crazy not to, especially when you have something valuable that people treasure and love. For me, it's much more personal, and I do look down my nose at people who do anything for a buck. I'm not like that. My wife certainly isn't like that. I've told the story of how she married me or why I knew that she was going to be a good wife. I used to sell cars. I have a natural sales ability. I've to pick up extra money for the family. I've always done sales jobs. And, I'm a naturally optimistic person, so that helps in sales. And I had one guy when I was 19 years old, and my wife and I had just met, and I thought she'd be proud of me because I've talked a little bit about it. She used to be a model. She came from, a really good background. Her parents were well-to-do. She was part of the country club culture, and she was being nurtured along to be a a country club bride. In fact, when we were married, and back in those days in the '80s, the Beckett Ridge Country Club was pretty premier. It'd be like Four Bridges in Liberty Township now, or maybe even more than that. We were married at the Beckett Ridge Country Club. When it really meant something. When a lot of the Reds players lived in Beckett Ridge, and that's where everybody hung out back then. So, just to kind of give a perspective of where she was coming from, I thought she'd be proud of me when I was selling a car. She came to see me at the car lot I was working at, and I found out later that the car lot was a money laundering scam for a drug operation in Cincinnati, ran by the mob. I've told some of those stories too, and I know there are people who watch these that like to hear about my stories about interactions with the mob, and I have a lot of stories to tell, and I could probably write books and books and books on them. But in this case, I was a good, strong salesperson, and I was selling a car for like $5,000 over market. It was nearly illegal. The bank was having a hard time financing such a large amount, and it was way over sticker price, and the guy was going to pay cash for it. And if you've ever been around salespeople, when they say it's strong, it's when you get people to do things they otherwise wouldn't do. One test we used to do is we'd collect the car keys before we take people in the booth. Back then, this is before Saturn completely reinvented the way you bought a car, where people didn't want to get hassled on a car lot. So a lot of that's changed now, but back when I was doing it was hard. You'd have a collection of 15 sales guys fighting it out for commission that day. And as soon as someone came on the lot, you got right in their window. You had to be the first one to engage with that person. And it was hard. It was a very difficult life. And I did well. I made a lot of money doing it. And I had my wife, future wife to be, was coming to a car lot to see me. Coming to my car lot to see me. We're going to go have some dinner together. And I was finishing off a sale. I was selling a guy a truck, an older guy, retired guy, for $5,000 over sticker, which back then was enormous. And everybody, it was strong. I had his car keys. I had him going across the street to take the cash out of his bank account. So the bank wouldn't finance it. We did an initial finance check through the finance department, and they were like, "You got to bring the sticker price down a little bit." And the head sales manager said to me, "Hoffman, do you think you can go get that guy to pay cash for that thing? Because the finance guys are saying we're ripping this guy off." I said, "Let me go see." So I went out and I talked to him, and I earned his trust. And he trusted me. He would have trusted me with his life. He would have put $1 million in front of me and trusted that I would still be there when he came back if he went to go get a hot dog or something. He trusted me emphatically. And it's because I spent 6 hours with him that day talking and getting to know him, letting him get to know me. And a trust had formed, and enough so I could say, "Hey, man, if you want this truck today, you need to go get the cash out of Fifth Third Bank over across the street." And he's like, "Oh, I'll do that. Is that going to help you?" "Okay, I'll go do that." He's going to go take $13,000 out in cash and bring it over to buy the truck in cash, so we didn't have to deal with the finance department, and I can get my $5,000 over sticker price. So my future wife happened to be there at the time, and she heard. I told her I thought she'd be proud. I thought this was going to be great. I thought her parents would like me for it. I thought everybody would be like, "Hey, wow, that's great, strong sales stuff." I'd be a hero at my job, and everybody would respect me. But she didn't. She was very, very upset with me for it. She said, "How can you take advantage of a guy like that?" And I ended up telling the guy, we ended up financing it traditionally. I called him off taking the cash deal out, and I backwalked it through the finance department. We did go get a loan for the guy at a decent price, and my commission was cut in half. The dealership was really upset about it, and needless to say, I only worked there probably for a few more weeks because they were so unethical. And my wife, it was really, I could have a life with my wife, or I could get a $5,000 commission and make a lot of money. I was saving up a little bit of money to buy a Corvette that was at that lot, and I was going to get a good price on it. I was like $3,000 away from buying the Corvette. So I was that's the kind of world I was in, and my wife said, it's the Corvette or me. I've been around these kind of sellouts all my life. I don't like them, and I don't want to marry one. I don't want to date one. They're a dime a dozen. I have a whole line of people who are members of the country club that hit on me. They call me all the time. They know I'm a model. They show up wherever I'm modeling and bring me nice stuff. They're a dime a dozen. And they're all the kind of people that you're going to grow up and not want to be like. I don't want anything to do with those cookie cutter people. Yeah, they might live in the McMansions, as they call them. They might have, which you see today, they might be the guys that are head of their country club and they wear the golf shirts around. And they're advocates for casual Fridays, those kinds of people. And I've never liked them. I didn't like them then. The games of engagement when I worked at that place was, that's how you won, is you made people pay overpriced for something, and your credibility was what they invested in. The car was just a secondary thing. They paid money. If you told them the price was $13,000 and you only had 8 in it, or 7, then and I'm just thinking back down memory lane when I say it. And a lot of those ideas came out in this book. Because needless to say, I went on and married my wife. We've been married for almost 40 years now. And when I wrote this book, it was about 35 years we've been married. And I had a lot of stories to tell because I had good grounding at home. I have a wife that supports me. And if she wanted that kind of life, she could have married anybody. There's a whole line of people that used to put their hats on backwards, put their collars up in the 80s and early 90s, and wear the little penny loafer shoes. They bought boats, they bought large houses, they bought vacation houses. They had all the stuff that people measure success by, and she found them all boring. And she had people her dad's age who were willing to throw $1 million at her just to go to a wine tasting, so they could show off that they had a hot young chick. And that's the life that she was giving up in order to be with somebody that she figured had enough integrity to keep her interested for a sustained period of time. So, given that level of integrity, let me explain something. And a lot of that ends up in the Gunfighter code that I write about here, and people love all the gunfighter notions. One thing that we've always liked, she and I, is we go to our gunfighter competitions, and they tend to be conservative. They tend to be very much Bible oriented. They love the 10 Commandments. So there's an ethics that goes on in the gunfighter community that is unique, and I put a lot of those into the business. And I utilize that same mentality in business to this very day. And I really started the practice with that guy buying that car. And I've told that story before, but I have to, when we talk about ethics and turning down a large sum of money to move 2 states away for probably 3 or 4 months to teach the Gunfighter's Guide to a hungry workforce from a CEO who is really much in need of a culture change. Wants to get his company on the fast track. And I'll tell you what brought it up. He read my book. Actually, he heard me talking about SpaceX and how SpaceX is going to be the future. He thought, wow, that sounds pretty cool. This guy sounds like he knows what he's talking about. So he bought the Gunfighter's Guide to Business. He read it, and then he not that it's that predictable. I am a concealed carry holder, and I usually travel around town by different routes during the week because it is a concern a valid concern that people pull up next to me at stoplights, and I would be vulnerable. Carrying weapons, firearms, eliminates that to some extent. But it's better, the best way to eliminate those kinds of problems is not to be involved in them. So I usually travel different ways to work. But this guy had figured out that I tend to go to Costco on Wednesdays or Thursdays. I usually have a long day on Thursdays because I have to do an overseas call on Thursdays, which a lot of people know about. And because of the time zone, I usually have to stay up and about to accommodate their morning in our late day. So when it's 7 o'clock here, it's 8 o'clock in the morning there. So it's a long day. So I usually give myself a break and I go to Costco. I usually in Liberty Township. And I like to just get up and walk around. I like to see what new books they have out. If they have some new ones I haven't read yet, I usually buy them. And I like shopping for treasures at Costco. I like to see what's good for the kid, what the grandkids might like. I stop by, usually get a hot dog and a Coke. And that's my life. That's what I like doing. I enjoy it. Well, somebody had watched me. This guy had studied me enough to know that pattern. And he caught me in the little aisle before you scan in to get into Costco. He caught me there where you have all the carts. And he's like, Rich. And he had this in his hand. And he said, I need you to sign this, and I want to make you an offer. Hey, I want you to come out. I'm going to write a check. I want you to come out to my company and spend a few months teaching my workforce the concepts of the Gunfighter's Guide to Business. I think a lot of them are brilliant. And I don't hear it enough, and I'd like to hire you to come in. And I was like, well, I don't really do consulting. I talk bad about consulting in here. I call them bounty hunters and dandies, people that come latelys. After some entrepreneur goes out and builds something, then the dandies come along and try to take charge of it. And I talk about the bounty hunters and the dandies, like the writer in the movie Unforgiven. I think his name was Richard Harris, who played that Clint Eastwood's Gunfighter, who was the authentic guy who actually went around and killed people for real, the actual real gunfighter. You had people who made a living off the efforts of the gunfighters, and they sold dime novels and all kinds of things. And you have bounty hunters that go around and collect bounties off the killings. And there's a lot of parasites out there that live off the efforts of somebody who goes out and actually initiates something. This book was dedicated to those who actually go out and initiate something. And this guy was one of those people. And he had made a good fortune, but he was having workforce engagement problems. And I tend to have very engaged workforces. And all the years I've ever done things like in business. And so I talk about the magic to that in here and how you can do it. And a lot of the kinds of people that I talk about that end up in the consulting profession, people that my wife did not want to date and be associated with in those early days, the country club days. She got a good taste of that through her parents, didn't want any part of it, married the opposite of that. And it was very disappointing to her to even know that I was contemplating having this guy go across the street and take out $13,000 from his bank account out of his retirement, cash to give to me just to impress the guys in the sales office. Because the bank had said no go on a loan. We usually sold cars mostly on Saturdays. This was a Saturday. He was going over to get money out of his, the bank was open, I think, till 5 that day. It was a special deal that they had, and they stayed open till 5, and he went over to take his cash out to buy a car. Because the bank usually financed everything on Monday, but they would run by credit reports, you knew they were a sure thing on finance. So you could do pre-financing on a Saturday with some of our financial partners. And they had already said no. So I wanted to impress them all by saying, I'm going to get to a yes, one way or the other. And I got the guy to go get the money. Well, I thought my wife would be proud. And she's like, how many people that ask me out and have a lot of money right now? They already have Corvettes. They're already in their parents' country club as full members for the rest of their life. I could have a cookie cutter life. I could be a stay-at-home mom and live in a gigantic house, be comfortable forever. That's not what I want. And so she picked me. And a couple weeks later, I quit that job, even though I was making more than my dad made at the time as a high-level executive. I was making that at 18, 19 years old. And I quit the job and I got a job at a metal stamping plant. And it was a school of hard knocks, and I worked my way through all those different manufacturing opportunities. I ended up at Cincinnati Millicron for a while it was open. Now, if you go to Oakley, it's all gone, and a lot of it's gone because they lost control of their labor, they lost control of their market, and I've seen a lot of these things happen up close. There was a period of my life where I was on the front end of the Amazon conveyor belt manufacturing business. And I ran teams of people who ran 7 days a week, 24/7, building all those Amazon factories that are all over, distribution centers that are all over the country. A lot of the conveyors that are in those places, I had some part of making. And then it was hot for a while in the 90s, and then it just went dead cold. And a lot of those places went bankrupt and out of business. So I've seen how the school of hard knocks works, and it didn't come from comfort. And so I wrote this book out of the school of hard knocks, and that's why it has value, and that's why this guy is flagging me down. He's asking me to come out and teach his workforce as a consultant. I'm like, dude, I can't do that because I talk against it. And then I have to tell this story because I started telling a little bit, but there was no room for the context of it. I think his feelings were really hurt that he offered a lot of money, and I said no. And it's really because I go back to the time with my wife and that older man to buy that truck with cash. I've always functioned at a high level of ethics, and in one of these manufacturing facilities I had to run a cell, and you had these and safety, I call them safety tyrants, and it's excessively been normalized in corporate culture, all corporate cultures. So when I said SpaceX is breaking the mold, it's because they don't play it safe. They're competent. And being competent and playing it safe, I distinguish in this book, the safety tyrants are those who are afraid of their own shadows, and they hide it by saying, we're trying to create a safety and compliant culture. Well, I had an engineer I was working with on a line, and he had sworn to all the ownership that you can only make 9 of these particular things, very valuable things, in a day. And I unlocked the ability to make 12 of them a day. And a lot of that was team building, asking the right questions to the right people, figuring out where the sandbagging was going on, because there's always people sandbagging, pacing things. And I don't like those kinds of people. I've seen them, and I've spent most of my life breaking down their schemes. I've hated them, and the feeling's been mutual. I do not like sandbaggers. I do not like the safety tyrants. And this guy had promised everybody that 9 was all you could ever get. He was excessively intelligent, and I always talk about PhD level people that I have to deal with. This is one of those guys. In fact, shortly after what I'm getting ready to tell you, he was in China consulting, and he had a heart attack at dinner, and he died. And I'll get to that in a minute. That's happened to me a lot, where people who I've gone up against in ways where you get into a compliance fisticuff. The Gunfighter's Guide to Business is a great attitude to have. And I can think of at least 7 people who have died the same way this guy died. The pressure gets to them. They, I know people, think they love Jesus and they love forgiveness and all that stuff. I'm not a forgiving person. That's why I wrote a book saying the Gunfighter's Guide. You shoot your opponent. You destroy your enemy. You don't forgive them. You don't give them a kiss. You destroy them. If they make themselves enemies of you, you destroy them every way you possibly can. And if Jesus wants to forgive them, hey, have at it. I'm not going to be that guy. And I'm not going to say, hey, God, forgive them. Father, they don't know what they're doing. Jesus can do that if he wants. I'm not that person. And I never will be. And that's why I wrote the Gunfighter's Guide instead of the conservative viewpoint guide to running a business. No, I'm saying if someone makes themselves your enemy, kill them. Destroy them. All right, so this guy was one of those safety tyrants. He was very mad at me for figuring out how to do it better than him. Because who was I? He was a credentialed, highly respected global engineer. And he was telling everybody who trusted him, and I've dealt with a whole long line of these people over the years. They all are built the same way, and I despise every one of them. And unfortunately, this guy who read my book, he's drowning in those people, and he really wanted me to come in and pretty much lick them off and cast them aside so they weren't corrupting his workforce. Because when you put out headhunters and headhunters bring you a bunch of people, they're usually not very good people. Most of them are the kind of people my wife was trying to avoid dating when I talked about that story. They're not very ethical people. Most people aren't. That doesn't help you with, the blog or hits or book sales. But that's being honest about it. Anyway, this guy was a safety tyrant, and he came up to me once we started pushing out 12 a day, because we figured out where he had sandbagged in the cycle. And he thought he was going to use his credentials to hide through compliance any innovations that might make it go faster. So when you talk about the theory of constraints, I always talk about Herbie, the book, The Goal. You always identify the Herbie, and my statement is always figure out who Herbie is and make Herbie get skinny. Don't pace your constraints around Herbie. Work to make your constraints better and more efficient. Don't surrender to Herbie. Well, the Herbies of the world get protected by compliance, which is basically the normies, the average people out there. And they want to make a lot of money, and they want a corporate culture that protects them, lets them work from home, lets them order pizza at 9 o'clock in the morning and not have too much of a stressful day. Corporate culture protects them. And I find the whole thing disgusting for all the reasons I've been saying. And after 30-some years of doing all this and coming home to my wife every day and her saying, you didn't make someone walk over to the bank to take out $12,000 to buy a car that's only worth $8,000, did you? No, I was very ethical and very honorable. I have been, I always am. And then when the ownership's like, hey, we really, in order to make money at this product, we got to figure out how to make 12 of them a day, not 9. Okay, I went to work. I figured out how to do it. And this engineer hated me for it. And he went out of his way to try and make my name sound terrible. Said I was unethical. Said I was out of compliance because I wasn't following the compliance standards, which wasn't true. And always when these people come after me like that, they always end up in some sort of detriment. They always end up injured, whether God does it for me or whether the pressure of the circumstance does it. They all seem to die of heart attacks. And I'm thinking of 7 people who openly came out against me, viciously, tried to get me destroyed in lots of ways. And then I get a phone call at 4 o'clock in the morning or 5 o'clock in the morning. Hey, so-and-so died last night. And with this particular person, he tried to get me destroyed legally, ruin me professionally, because he didn't like the fact that I figured out how to do it faster than him. And he sandbagged, and he tried to hide the sandbagging through compliance. And I beat him bad, and the pressure of it, I know he was very stressed out. I got one of those calls at 4 o'clock in the morning and said that this guy had just died, and he was being flown back. And I haven't talked about this too recently because respect for the family. I'm not one to dance on people's graves. But they called me up and they said, you want to contribute anything to it? We all knew him. You guys had a love-hate relationship, but he really, really respected you. Do you want to contribute anything? And I'm like, no, I'm glad he's dead. Exactly what I said. And he came back, and everybody went to the funeral. I didn't go to the funeral, and I didn't go to the funeral of the other 7 guys. You know why? When you shoot people in a gunfight, you don't cry over their graves. You don't dance on it either. You let people carry the body away, and you get the impediments out of your way. That's what you do. And that's what this guy wanted. And I have to tell you that I am in a fight at the moment with very vicious characters. And I'm testing myself to see how ethically I can work the situation, and which will probably end up being a sequel to this book. I would be willing to bet. I'm out there. I wrote the Politics of Heaven, which I think is jaw-dropping in some of the assertions. It's going to cause a lot of trouble. I know it. And early reviews on it certainly concur with that opinion. But and everybody asks me, what's your next book? I usually write a new book every 7 or 8 years. I'm very proud of this one. It still sells. You can get it on Amazon. The quantities of it, usually people, usually have 1 or 2 people who watch these videos, they go out and buy it. I still get checks. Sometimes we get a royalty check, and my wife and I go out to dinner on the check. It's kind of fun to get. I mean, you don't make a fortune on books. I write them because I wanted to have something more sustainable, and because sometimes these guys, like this guy, he'll buy bulk quantities. He'll buy like 100 of them, and they'll pass them out at the factory and say, here's a person I know. You want to figure out how to run a better company? Here, management, take this book and go make a better thing. And I suggested to him, I said, why don't you just, the book is laid out. I laid it out so I don't have to make a personal appearance. I made it very simple. I even have, because I knew it was going to come up, I even have at the end of each chapter these bullet points over here. The bullet points here, usually it's 4 items, and it gives you the summary of that so people can go back and reflect. At the end of each chapter, what's your bullet points so they can take a test and learn how to be more efficient and better, ethical business people. But also, when you're dealing with all the unethical types that are out there, you can think like a gunfighter and gun them down, and don't sleep about it. Don't cry about it. When you get the calls at 4:00 in the morning saying, hey, that guy who was trying to kill you and get you fired and terminated and knocked out of the industry, calling you unethical and saying that you put quantity over quality. That guy died last night in China as he was consulting for a firm in China. Do you want to contribute anything? Do you want to throw some money in the hat for his wife and for the family? No, not at all. Happy to hear it. All right, are you done talking to me? I'm going back to bed. Well, that's pretty heartless. It's not very godlike or forgiving. Hey, Jesus wants to forgive him, forgive him. I'm not. That's not how I operate. So that's either good or bad, and people will be upset about it or happy about it. That's how I am. Ethically, I'm good. I behave ethically all the time. My wife loves me. And that's all that matters. It's the only judge that matters to me. And all the rest of them, they can get their bullet hole to the head and be thrown in another shallow grave as far as I'm concerned. And if you have a gunfighter spirit, I talk about it in here, you don't just transition to a dandy and just start taking credit for everybody else's hard work. You still go out there and face down the bullets that are coming at you. That's one of the reasons I always liked Andrew Jackson, and I like Teddy Roosevelt. I love that Teddy Roosevelt took a bullet during a speech, even though he was the inventor of the Progressive Party. He kept talking for another hour with a bullet in him and him bleeding from it. And if the Secret Service hadn't rushed him off, he would have kept talking at that rally where he was shot in the ear. And once he knew he wasn't critically wounded, he would have kept talking. And that's the kind of person I like to see. So as I told this person at Costco, hey man, thank you. I appreciate the nice offer. Him going out and buying 100 books, and this is when I talk about the Amazon rankings. I'll go maybe months and months and one or two copies to sell. And then all of us, and then Amazon will discount. They always keep a couple on their shelf. So they'll buy a couple books, and someone buys them, they buy more and put it back on the shelf. So you'll see the ranking kind of plateau out. And when people have bought a lot of books, then the original retail price is, I think, something around $16, $16 to $19 per copy. When it's normally, I don't know if I get a price on the back of here. Yeah, I think it's around $16, $16.99. Normal retail. But if the book's sit on the shelf for a while, Amazon will drop it down to their purchase price, and they'll sell it for $5, $6. You'll sometimes see it very cheap, and you can pick it up dirt cheap because they're trying to sell the copies on the shelf. And as soon as their inventory triggers that those copies sold, then they'll send a note to the publisher. Publisher will make more books, send it to Amazon. That's how the game works. So a couple times a year I get a royalty check. Usually it could be anywhere between $40 to $500, $40 to $500, depending on what's going on. And that's dinner money. And sometimes my wife and I, if it's one of the high side ones, we'll go have a nice dinner and say, yeah, it's nice to write books, or we'll use it for vacation money. But the amount of money this guy was offering me was a lot more than him saying, okay, if you're not going to come out, I'm going to go buy 100 books. So I guess he went out and bought 100 books. And that means that if you go to buy the book on Amazon, because all the inventories were cleared out to satisfy that order, you'll probably see the book at the top price for a while. If you wait a few weeks and it drops back down, their inventory system will get impatient and trigger a lowering of the price. And I'm not saying, I'm not out there trying to make dollars off a lot of stuff. I give away a lot of stuff for free because in my mind, I'm not in a race to fill my retirement account. My wife, I gave a little background to our relationship. It doesn't require it. We usually stay out of circumstances where you got to throw $100 bills at things. And our idea of a nice night is a good royalty check from book sales. That she'll go out to the mailbox and all of a sudden, hey, honey, you got a $500 check for books. I thought, oh, someone must have bought a bunch. Block bought them. So a lot of units sold. And that's cool. Let's go to Jags or some nice steakhouse and not worry about the money. And you can go usually a decent dinner for two at Jags. You can easily spend $700, $800, which is what we like. That's my idea of a good night on the town. But we seldom ever do that off just straight money. It's usually from some bonus that comes from somewhere. And we could have had a very big bonus from this guy. And I appreciate the offer, believe me. But doing that would be more like a bounty hunter or a dandy, as outlined in this book, not a gunfighter. I got more gunfighting to do. There's some really treacherous characters that I'm dealing with. And they're sharks at a shark extreme. And I'm testing myself to see, I'm testing myself. I'm writing future books. The stories that will come out of this experience will be future books. That's for sure. And you got to think like a gunfighter. You got to be like, you can't just talk it. You can't just write a book about it and then join a country club and live off the royalties. You write another book. You go get hungry. You go take the next step and evolve. But you always got to think like a gunfighter. Those who are trying to kill you and shoot you down, you got to square your shoulders, face them without fear. That's why I've started talking about Teddy Roosevelt. And I think of Andrew Jackson, even when he was a very well-respected politician and general, very high up when he was challenged. He did not back down. and he got shot a lot in duels. He dueled a lot. He was a great president, and he took on the banks, and he did a lot of great things. And that's the kind of thing I think lasts. How much you licked the boots of what they want to be as your betters, those who are trying to gun you down, the safety tyrants. As I write in my book, those are the people who sink your organization. And when I talk about SpaceX, that doesn't mean they're dangerous. You go to SpaceX and they're very safe, very good. They're very lean. They're very forward thinking, but they also aren't afraid of risk. They have they accommodate risk boldly. They don't try to shut them down. And cultures that do that have to throw a lot of corporate money at the problem because they've got a lot of safety tyrants who are running their organization, and they all make too much money. They're lazy, and you got to pay them too much, and they won't risk anything because they've built a whole system around not being risky. And the gunfighter ultimately goes out and faces down your opponents, where the dandies and the bounty hunters sneak up behind you and shoot you in the back. And that's how they function. And the world is in a very good place with them in it, which is why I criticize the consultant culture so much. I think, thank you for the offer, but I'll stay with the gunfighter's guide to business mentality, because you got to square your shoulders, pull your guns, and face down those trying to kill you. And if you live through it all, that's great. If you kill the other guy, or the other guy dies in the conflict with you, it's okay. It's cool. Let him die. And when I've had those 4:00 in the morning conversations, people will say it's heartless. It's not very Christian. It's not very forgiving. Like, you know what? I don't care. Guy came after me. The guy came after me. Came after my family. He would try to destroy me. So he died in China. As a consultant to a bunch of communists. I'm cool with it. Do I want to help? No. Do you want me to throw some dirt on his body? Yeah, I'll show up for that. But to show up and say a bunch of nice things at a funeral? No, not at all. I remember what he did right before he went to that trip to China. We got in a huge argument at a manufacturing facility. And he said to me, because I was pushing for more parts, and he pushed, and he said to me, I do not want to wake up tomorrow morning and find out that a plane crashed, killing everybody on board because I rushed something through, implying that my pushing was going to cause people to die. You know what? You can suck on it, buddy. And that's why I told him. Got in a huge argument over it. He went to China and he was dead a couple days later from a massive heart attack. I had a director of quality get into it with me because we were pushing out some sales for the day, and he deliberately sabotaged the sales for the day. There were some bonded kind of inserts on a part, and he pushed them out at final inspection so we would not hit our quota, because he was pacing the control because it gave him power. Whoever controlled the sales schedule had power over the whole factory. And that's kind of what this guy's dealing with. And he was hoping I could come there, my reputation might root him out and force him to quit and leave. And I told him, I said, well, to have that kind of culture change, it takes about 3 months. So you have to have somebody who moves in across from their offices and harasses them and follows them home and makes them think about you when they're sleeping and makes them eat too much and go into cardiac arrest. I've had finance people that went through that. This director of quality, we got into it over that issue. And within 4 days of that big fight, he died of a massive heart attack. And I'm just saying, not that I wished it on him, but I didn't shed a tear for any of them. They were deliberately malicious. And they were the kind of people that go out there and stab people in the back, literally. And you can put all kinds of fancy talk in these books. And when you do talk about lean events, the amount of corporate backstabbing that goes on, nobody deals with it. Well, I do. And I've never talked about these things before, but I feel like I owe it to people who watch this and are thinking the same thing this guy is. Hey, I want to hire you as a consultant. Here's a check. Put whatever number on there you want. I said, dude, it's not about the money. I don't really want to pick up my family and move. We got a nice little cozy little thing going on. We like it. I'm not against it, but I appreciate the opportunity, and I know what you need to do. And I know the attitude you're looking for. You've got a bunch of parasites who are sucking the life out of your organization. You want to get rid of them. And I get it. And they become safety tyrants, and they're like, oh, let's do our safety walk. Oh, did somebody have vertigo? Did someone get a little dizzy turning their head too suddenly? Oh, let's shut the whole line down. Just like the Toyota Kata people do. You know what the difference is? In the Toyota plants in Japan and the union-driven people in the United States, the union plants, you know what the difference is? They have a great work ethic in Japan. They don't have a very good work ethic in the United States. And that's the biggest problem with our labor force. And that's unpopular to say, but I deal with that here too. Got to have a good work ethic and be willing to face down danger every day, and don't let the safety tyrants destroy your organization to hide their laziness behind compliance, which is what that engineer I talked about was doing. And when he got pressed on the matter, I don't want to wake up tomorrow and find out that a plane went down with my name on it because I let people like you push me too hard. You're a bully, Rich Hoffman. You pushed parts, not compliance. You know what? I had a long history of that. It's in this book. And a lot of people are very, very happy that they have that copy in their possession. And they learned a lot from it. And so much so that this guy actually traveled 2 states away to catch me on a Thursday going to Costco because I wasn't answering my phone. And he kept calling me. It was a phone number I didn't know. And I never answer a phone number I don't know. Yeah, never, ever. Not one time. And I wasn't picking up. He called me everywhere he could get a number for me. And he actually got on a plane and flew to Cincinnati to catch me at Costco because intelligence had told him that I go to Costco to get hot dogs on Thursdays on my overseas call day. And so he wanted to hire me to come to his place, teach the Gunfighter's Guide to Business, but you can't, it's something you got to have in your heart. You got to have the attitude. And if I did something like that and accepted that very large amount of money for something that I criticize, then, I might make a lot of money, but my wife wouldn't be very happy with me. Going back to that car lot and selling that truck to that old man, she wouldn't go for that. And so that's the kind of stuff that keeps me on top of things, keeps me honest and engaged. And just so you know, when she hears these conversations and I say on the speakerphone, oh, I'm glad he's dead. Oh, great. She gives me grief about it. Oh, you should be more forgiving. Oh, don't damn his soul. God, I'm sure God will forgive him. You'll see him again in heaven. And I'm like, you know what? If they want to, they being God and Jesus, they want to let someone like that into heaven, maybe I don't want to be there, because they're just going to make a mess of things. But she hears me, and I do this kind of thing. All right, thanks. Glad to hear it. When you have enemies, do them in and see to their personal destruction. Any way possible. That's one thing I do teach in the Gunfighter's Guide to Business. Think like a gunfighter. They're going to shoot you if you don't shoot them. So draw and shoot and don't hesitate. And that's, should business be a cutthroat world like that? Well, there's a lot of corporate rules that have Marxism and socialism rooted into them that says, no, you should be nice. Let's have a nice group hug. Let's have CEOs who contribute to conservationists. I like conservation. But let's be more inclusive and softer hearted and not so ruthless. I'm saying you got to be ruthless because there's a lot of ruthless people out there, and they use the safety compliance crowd to disguise their own ruthlessness. And they use compliance rules that they make up to sandbag and create herbies to your constraints. And they've been doing it forever, and my attitude towards them is get them out of the way, any means possible. And that gets you in trouble in corporate culture. But it's what people love this book. Why, when I talk about it in this book, when you have enemies, they're going to go after you, so don't hesitate with them. That's for sure. It's the way you got to think. And if I stepped out of the fight I'm in now to take a nice gig like that, I wouldn't be any better than the rest of them. And the value of that has more value than wealth of any kind. So it's its own multi-million-dollar bank account. And I'm not giving that up for anything. So for context, it's kind of how it rolls. And that's why I had to say no. And thanks for the opportunity. I appreciate those kinds of opportunities. But you can't be a wimp, and you can't back out when the bullets start flying. And I'm in a situation where the bullets are flying. Maybe a few months down the road, I'm not so much. But when they're shooting at you, you don't go run into the hills. Because people got to believe in the things you write. And they've got to see that you're willing to, not that you want to get shot, but that you can face down death itself and take bullets and carry them around and continue doing your stuff. Don't let them stop what you're doing. And be ruthless with them back, because they're certainly plotting and scheming your demise. Don't play nice in return just because it's ethical. When God does you a favor and takes them off the slate card, I clap at every one of them. And I got a feeling that's going to go on for quite some time. Not that I have to do it. A lot of times they do it to themselves, because it's hard to live under that kind of pressure, especially when they know they're wrong. Anyway, H. Rich Hoffman here. Share, subscribe, make tomorrow a better day. If you haven't read my book, The Gunfighter's Guide to Business, right here, I think you'll love it. A lot of people do. I think you'll learn a lot, and it'll give you probably a much better life. And you might have a spouse that enjoys you coming home more if you follow those rules. Anyway, have a good day. See you later.
In the age of disclosure, you must understand the politics of heaven. Coming soon.
Coming soon, the politics of heaven in 2027. A treasure hunt through heaven and all human history.